This is one of my personal favorite TV shows of all time. It's definitely in my top 5, and rewatching it makes me reconsider the hierarchy of my favorite superheroes. I like that this show is so dark. It took a street-level hero like Daredevil and really plunged him into the dirt.
Yeah.
And it made the show super gritty, super enthralling for an adult audience. And I love that it's not like a PG-13 show. I think it's one of the best things about the series.
Whenever the Russian guy shows up to the restaurant and that causes Fisk to chop his head off with a door, to me, even all these years later, besides that first hallway fight, that's the scene that like sticks in my head the most.
I heard somewhere that the showrunner for the Born Again series that's coming out here in March was saying that at the worst, this series is just two people in a room talking, that it's very dialogue heavy, and that they're going to try to cut down on that so they can have more action in the show. Rewatching it this time around, did you guys agree with that? Do you think there was a lot of dialogue that maybe went on too long or was over expository or anything, or was it kind of perfect, or where do you guys sit? Welcome to Backseat Directing,
where we talk about movies, TV shows, comics, and more.
We're your hosts,
Matt Murdock,
Daredevil, with Foggy.
We put out new episodes every Monday and Thursday.
And on this episode, we're talking about season 1 of Daredevil.
3, 2, 1, action.
What's up, guys?
How's it going?
You glad to be here with us as Foggy Nelson today?
Yeah, I didn't know we were dressing up until I got here.
It's honestly really good to see both of you today.
He's in character.
So today we're going to go over Daredevil Season 1, the Netflix series, break it down in depth, talk about it with you guys, maybe talk about some of our opinions, talk about our favorite fights, favorite characters. This is one of my personal favorite TV shows of all time. It's definitely in my top 5, and rewatching it makes me reconsider the hierarchy of my favorite superheroes. I was talking with you guys about this last week, that like Daredevil moves up my list a little more every single time I watch it. And he might be second to only Batman at this point.
Dang.
That's saying quite a bit. This is kind of in preparation for the new Disney series, Born Again, that's coming out. When does that come out? March?
May? Oh, no, yeah, March 4th, I think, yeah.
March 4th, yeah.
Something like that.
Right. So, coming up in a few weeks. Wow, that's like right around the corner, huh?
Yeah, we all started...
Can't believe it.
We all started rewatching the show, to be clear. We've all seen Daredevil. We all started rewatching it to get hyped, to get anticipated for Daredevil Born Again coming out next month. And we're planning to try to do one episode each week, reviewing Season 1, then Season 2, then Season 3 of the existing Netflix series. So comment below if you want the following 2 episodes for Season 2 and Season 3 if you find this interesting.
We should be lined up to kind of get these out literally the week right before.
Yeah.
So that's pretty good timing.
Look at you guys.
Finally on time for something
Professionals.
Be professional. Okay, so make sure that you like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of our awesome content. But let's talk about Daredevil. Like I mentioned, created by Netflix, ran from 2015 to 2018. We'll be talking about that original season that released in 2015. Rated TVMA, which means it's rated mature. Around average episode length of around 50 minutes to an hour, 13 episode season. And we're going to try to kind of break it down episode by episode. It won't be too particular. You know, we're kind of going to freeform talk about the show, but to give it some structure, I'll name each episode and then give the episode description to you guys so that you and us are all on board with where we're at in the show as we're breaking it down. But before we go headlong into that, I think we can all assume that our favorite character in Season 1 is the same. It's Daredevil.
For sure.
But what's your guys' favorite side character in the show? Let's discount Kingpin as well, because I feel like that's too easy of an answer.
Okay.
It's a show full of a great cast of characters.
You want me to go first?
Go ahead. Yeah, as a guest.
So, mine is probably Ben Urich.
He's so good in season... I forgot how good he was in Season 1. By the way, spoiler alert for Daredevil Season 1. I'm going to say the first big spoiler here. I assume you've seen it if you're here. It's been out since 2015. 10 years now? God, we're old.
Oh, jeez.
I was a freshman.
I didn't even think of it that way.
But Ben Urich, I forgot because he dies in season 1, I forgot how much I loved him in season 1, because he's so when he tells Karen to give it up, and then you see that he didn't give the story up, he's like, I never said that.
Right.
He's so invested in uncovering the truth as a person, and he has like this moral superiority to him. He's such a well-written, lovable character, and he has like this father-daughter, mentor-mentee relationship with Karen that I appreciate so much.
Yeah, the Ben Urich stuff. I agree. I've only seen Daredevil. I've seen all 3 seasons, but I've seen them only once each. So this was only my second time ever watching it. And upon this rewatch, there's a lot of things that I didn't remember that I picked up on and kind of reappreciated as I watched this season. And the Ben Urich stuff is like probably at the top of the list for things that I didn't really remember were so good.
Yeah, and he's acted so well. I've actually seen him in a comic book, in Ultimate Spider-Man. He works at the Daily Bugle with Spider-Man.
That's pretty cool.
But speaking of these side characters, I want to hear Aaron's favorite too, but I want to name some of our actors from the show. So obviously Charlie Cox plays Daredevil, Vincent D'Onofrio plays Kingpin. We know these things, but who is everyone else? Deborah Ann Wall plays Karen Page. These are way out of order, but I'm pulling it up here on IMDb so I can tell you guys who else. Eldon Henson is Foggy Nelson. Royce Johnson is Sergeant Brett Mahoney. Where is Ben Urich? I guess since he's only in season 1, they have him further down.
Yeah, I was just looking for him too.
Aaron, who is your favorite side character?
What's the name of Kingpin's right-hand man?
Wesley.
That's what I was going to pick too.
Yeah.
That's who I was going to pick too.
That's a very good pick too. And honestly, that's another thing that I did not remember from season 1 at all. I didn't remember this guy at all. But then I rewatched it and I was like, man, this guy is so good.
He has such a strong presence, right? Like he doesn't take any of the BS, you know?
We don't say his name.
He handles everything that Kingpin needs him to, you know?
Well, that's what I love about him more than anything, is how prepared he is for different scenarios up until until his demise. A little bit of slip there for Wesley, but every time Kingpin needs something done, you can tell Wesley's there to anticipate his needs. When Kingpin says, bring this guy here, he's like, he's already in a car, or I'm already working on it. I already sent him. He's always anticipating the needs of him so well. I can see why Kingpin would be attached to him, because besides Vanessa, Kingpin sees every person to himself in terms of their utility, and Wesley is his best friend because he has the best utility of any human being basically in existence. Like, who else is a better number 2 than Wesley?
I was just going to say, he's probably the best right-hand man in, like, anything.
He gets it done. He wraps up with a bow, too.
Like, he's clean. Always prepared. He doesn't ever drop the ball.
Until Karen gets the drop on him, that's
underestimating women.
Yeah.
That, but also plot armor for Karen.
Yeah.
You think I would put a loaded gun on the table?
Yeah, he was probably like, shit.
He's also
loaded gun on the
he's so
table.
cool, calm, and collected too. Even in that moment, he's like, he's just calm. You think the gun is loaded?
I wish I remember how I felt when I first watched that scene. What, 10 years ago?
I know, right? I didn't even remember.
He was
any
pretty
of Wesley's
convincing,
stuff.
right? That he didn't load the gun, you know, like that he was just trying to get her like a little level of hope, and then she shot him like multiple times. Like, I can just imagine being like really shocked at that moment.
Guys, it's really disrespectful how far Ben Urich is down the list of the IMDb's cast. I think that they should reevaluate things. I know he was only in season 1, and they've got a lot of season 2 and 3 people on here, but come on, guys, get it together.
Let's say Aaron picked Wesley, so you can't pick him. Who would you pick as your next favorite?
There you go, putting pressure on
side
him. I like
character.
That.
So you guys have picked 2 of the best ones. I'm basically going to be caught between Night Nurse and Foggy, because I think Foggy's really incredible. Oh my God, Stick! He's in the show.
He's only in like
he's
one
in the show
episode.
So little, but he's so cool. He pulls off this old man Clint Eastwood demeanor and aesthetic, doesn't he?
He sure does.
Tough guy. It's between one of those 3, but I'll take Night Nurse. Rosario Dawson as Night Nurse is really good, and especially in the first half of the season, I was pulling for her and Matt Murdock being together so strong. Like that is the ship that I hold on to the most from this show. I really wish they had managed to make it work, her and Daredevil.
Yeah, and this kind of jumping ahead, but I like how she's kind of like a connecting piece to that Netflix universe. You know, she shows up in other shows and in the future, so it's not just like she's like, oh, I'm here in a few episodes in season 1 and then she's gone.
And that's one thing that I want to talk about as we're about to lead into getting episode by episode is how there's no fat on this show. It's very trim. Everything in it is super interconnected, as well as they make references to the MCU world at large. Even though the MCU world wasn't referencing them back, they still make references to the Battle of New York. In Ben Urich's office, there is newspaper clippings from Attack on Harlem with pictures of the Incredible Hulk from the Edward Norton movie. So there's lots of references throughout. Even the first episode, there's like 2 or 3 references to the Battle of New York. They say they got their real estate cheaper because of the Battle of New York, and then this is one area that was lucky to not be decimated by the battle. So it's really cool, the interconnected nature with MCU and also within the show itself.
Yeah, I didn't remember how on the nose the references were. I just I knew that the show referenced it and stuff, but I just assumed that it was like these like vague references to like, oh, the big green angry guy, and that could be any Hulk, you know.
I think it's even in the trailer for the show, maybe there's a line Wesley says where he's like talking to the Russians, and he says, well, I could see if he had a suit of armor or a magic hammer, then you'd be getting your asses kicked, but he doesn't.
So you said that the show doesn't have a lot of like extra stuff in it, you know, that is pretty trim and kind of right to the point. I heard somewhere that the showrunner for the Born Again series that's coming out here in March was saying that at the worst, this series is just 2 people in a room talking, that it's very dialogue heavy, and that they're going to try to cut down on that so they can have more action in the show. Rewatching it this time around, did you guys agree with that? Do you think there was a lot of dialogue that maybe went on too long or was over expository or anything, or was it kind of perfect, or where do you guys sit?
I think definitely, I wouldn't say it was perfect. Like, there's no flaws. There's really only like 1 or 2 times that I remember feeling like, man, they're kind of talking a lot in this episode. And like the main one was like the stick episode. There's a part where I think they're sitting in Matt's apartment and they're talking, and I'm like, dang, this is kind of a long conversation. But I think that overall, all those like conversational scenes, like, they have purpose and they kind of connect the story. I think that this show, compared to lots of other shows, does a really good job of like explaining why, or kind of like giving details that maybe you wouldn't really get in other shows, where they'd just be like, oh, they can just kind of like intuit this. But this show kind of explains like a good example that I can think of is like Fisk sends that like psychopath guy to the bowling alley to kill the guy who owned all the cabs, and then they do that so that Fisk can acquire that cab company. And then later in the show, they're showing them kind of like rebrand the cabs, and then they use the cab to kidnap nice nurse. And it's just like, there's that kind of like that running kind of plot point about these cabs that's like, this is not really the most entertaining thing or whatever, but it makes the world feel like it makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, stuff like that. The show is so compact in its delivery of information. The first appearance of Daredevil in the black suit in the show, it's like the 3rd scene in the show. They're on docks, and Turk is taking some human trafficking victims into a shipping container, and Daredevil stops them and takes the guys out. Well, that human trafficking operation is run by the Russians that are in the show, a big part of the show later. They're close-knit with Kingpin. Kingpin is having the Russians do this human trafficking operation. So even in just that opening scene, we're getting introduced to Daredevil. We're getting introduced to a long-running series, Turk, who's also a comic book character. We're getting introduced to the human trafficking, which is a large component of the plot later. It's all in one fight scene. It's visually awesome, and we're sucked into the show because like the 2nd or 3rd scene is a fight scene. They establish who Daredevil is by opening the show with him getting blinded, and then they quickly cut to this action sequence to keep audiences sat in their seats continuing to watch the show. But it's not just for that purpose, it also delivers so many plot elements. Like, I don't even think I thought about this the first time I watched the show.
Right.
I was just like, oh, he saved those girls. But it's connected to everything, because when you watch it at first, you don't know that it's connected to Wilson Fisk at all, but it is.
Mm-hmm. And while we're talking about that scene in particular, I think that the fact that they're dealing in human trafficking kind of really adds to the evilness of the bad guys in this show, because it's not just simply, oh, they're a bunch of like, you know, they deal drugs and that's why they're so rich. They have their hands in all these pots, and to me, like, human trafficking is probably the worst, you know, pot you can be dealing in. and it just makes the bad guys in the show just so much more despicable.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, like you said at the very opening of your response, that there are moments in Daredevil that I think either where the dialogue starts to repeat itself a little bit, maybe in the Murdoch v. Nelson episode when Foggy becomes aware that Matt's Daredevil, maybe some parts are a little bit repetitive with a lot of dialogue. I think the thing that makes it work in this show is that we care about the character so much. Because like I didn't notice it in the Stick episode because I was really enthralled with who Stick is. I didn't care about it very much in Murdoch v. Nelson's episode because I love Foggy and I love Matt, and that's a really exciting episode with a lot of flashbacks and more development for their friendship and development for how Matt became Daredevil. So everything I think still has a purpose. I wouldn't say it can be trimmed off as fat. I think there are some parts that feel a little slow, especially in like the third act of the series, I guess, like maybe the last 3 or 4 episodes, I think are the weaker part of the season. I think the strongest part of Daredevil season 1 is the first half. Would you guys agree with that?
Probably, mostly, yeah.
You say the first half's the strongest part?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The ending is still cool, but
I feel like it's more the middle, or like,
well, the second episode has the hallway fight scene.
yeah, I'm saying I think the like slow part is that like third, fourth. You know what I mean?
The 75% mark of the show.
Yeah.
3/4 through. I can see that. It's tough to pin down exactly one point. There's just some little lulls that I feel in the first season. While I still want to stand on saying that it is one of my favorite seasons of television ever.
Yeah, I'd like to say it too. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, because I was going to move to a new phase.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that I think that, you know, even we're talking about like maybe slow points in the season or lulls, but I think that those, again, I feel like those add to the show, because if this was a movie, right, we would not get all these, like, all this in-depth kind of like character development and backstory, and these side characters wouldn't be as strong. You know, in a movie, Wesley would probably just mainly be like a right-hand man, henchman, fixer, but we wouldn't really see as in-depth how well he does that job, or we wouldn't see as in-depth about who Ben Urich is and his wife, and kind of like his backstory too, about how he's always been this reporter who has cracked big stories and stuff like that. And we wouldn't be as connected to, I think, a lot of the characters besides probably like the main 4, like, you know, Daredevil, Kingpin, Foggy, and Karen.
Yeah, and it's crazy. The whole season you're watching that relationship with Ben Urich and his wife, and worried that she's gonna die, and worried for Ben that he's gonna lose his wife, and then she ends up losing him.
Yeah.
So there's like opportunities for ironic emotional twists like that. Wouldn't be as heartfelt if we didn't spend time that they were able to spend with that relationship. Like, we have scenes where he's talking to her, asking for advice, where she's lucid, and we have emotional connection, bond with that relationship we wouldn't have if it had to be cut into a movie.
Yeah. And I think too, like, you know, you guys know this, but there's like a term called like POV character, and I kind of feel like watching this season again, I feel like Ben is the POV character, because there's all these, like, you know, superhero elements in the show, and, you know, like, you know, organized crime and stuff like that, but the Ben Urich stuff and the connection to his wife and how they're struggling with, to me, I'm assuming it's like dementia that she has, like, that's kind of the most human element of the show. You know, people really go through those like harder times towards their end of their life or as they get older, and so it's like, to me, that's one of the most emotional things in the show, is that connection.
Yeah, it's also tapping into the concept of the man without fear, and one of the most universal fears, the fear of aging. You know,
Yeah.
and it's this show is like really dark, either emotionally in regards to that, or just really dark physically in terms of gritty violence, and really dark in terms of the crimes we already talked about, the human trafficking, drug trade, assassins, murders. So I like that this show is so dark. It took a street level hero like Daredevil and really plunged him into the dirt.
Yeah.
And it made the show super gritty, super enthralling for an adult audience. And I love that it's not like a PG-13 show. I think it's one of the best things about the series. Let's get into looking at, we'll go pretty quick on the episode by episode here. So season 1, episode 1, I love how creative the episode names are. It's Into the Ring. You know, it's a perfect name for the intro to the show. We're getting into the ring with Matt Murdock. This episode starts off with young Matt Murdock saving an old man. I saw a person make an interesting comment on this, that Matt is a unique superhero because he's one of a group of few people who was heroic and saved somebody before he had his powers. And he saved that old man and took those chemicals to the eyes. And the last thing he sees, interestingly, before his vision gets blurred out on the screen with this really cool effect, is his dad's face. So you got to consider the rest of the show that was done very intentionally because of the impact that his father's going to have on him for the rest of his life. The last thing he saw with his working eyes was his dad's face.
Yeah.
And then Matt gets blinded, and the point of the rest of this episode is now that the adult version of Matt Murdock, recently having graduated with his best buddy, Foggy Nelson, are starting their independent law firm. As we know from later in the series, they had a big internship at Landman and Zach. They got offered a position to be wealthy and defend rich people and corporations, but they decided to go off on their own, defend the little guys of Hell's Kitchen, you know, like a true street-level hero would. And they're opening their little business, looking for a shop, arguing about what clients they should take, because Foggy wants to make some money, and Matt wants to defend innocent people, which is when they run into Karen Page. Karen has been framed for the murder of one of her colleagues by a company she worked for called Union Allied.
R.I.P. Dan Fisher.
I know. This guy got the short end of the stick, dude. I don't even know. They explain why they left Karen alive. Is because Karen had a flash drive of information that proved that they were like basically laundering money or doing something illegal with their finances at Union Allied to wash money off the books. They were buying new properties and fixing them up after this ties in the MCU, after the disaster of New York in 2012 Avengers, and then they were laundering money through it. She had a flash drive that could prove it. They left her alive and framed her to try to extort or buy time to find that flash drive from her. She gets found by Matt and Foggy at the police precinct. They take her on as their first client, and Matt uses his hearing to hear her heartbeat, know that she's telling the truth, that she is innocent, and there's a bunch of scandalous things that happen in between there where Wesley, Kingpin's henchman, tries to have her murdered by one of the guards, who's interestingly a comic book Easter egg, because his name is the name of a character in the comics that goes by a name Marauder. So he's actually a comic book Easter egg as well. He tries to kill Karen. She narrowly escapes. They use their legal kung fu to get her out of custody, and then they ultimately prove her innocence using that flash drive. But when Karen goes back to get it, she's confronted by one of the hitmen for the organization, Kingpin's organization. Luckily, Matt's there as Daredevil, fights the guy, saves her, and they clear her name at the end of the day. She comes to work for them at Nelson and Murdock. So what are our thoughts on the first episode?
So, you want to go, Aaron, first?
That was a lot that happened in the first episode.
Well, that's what's cool is that these hour-long episodes is you get a lot.
Dude, they chock them full. Like, there's a bunch of flashbacks in this episode, too, that show Matt's relationship with his dad. Like when him and the assassin go flying out Karen's window and fall to the ground, we cut to a flashback and we see Matt as a young kid sitting at the table waiting for his dad to come home from a fight. He's sleeping. His dad wakes him up and his dad's like, come on, get up. And that's what he hears in his head before he gets up for the fight. So like they have all these flashbacks tied into that episode too that aren't even in the forward progressing plot, but help build the relationship with Matt and his father and explain who he is as a person. Do you guys enjoy having all these flashbacks in the show? Because there's a lot throughout. This young kid that plays Matt Murdock has a lot of screen time.
Yeah, I think that the flashbacks are really important to the story. Or maybe not so much the story, but your connection to the characters. Because I think, and I forgot to mention this up top, but I think besides the Ben Urich stuff, the Battle and Jack Murdock is my second favorite stuff in like, as far as like connection, characters and stuff goes. Just because like I think that bond he has with his dad, and the bond that the dad has with him, where they kind of like rely on each other. The mom's not in the picture, and like Jack gets beat up, and he relies on his son to stitch him up and stuff. And then I think it's really cool how it carries into Matt Murdock's adult life, the idolization of his father. And I think too, like he carries some guilt because he mentions it at least a few times where he says like, my dad never wanted me to fight. He wanted me to use my head.
And he says my dad got killed because of me too. When he's talking to Stick later, he says that his dad got killed because of him.
So I think he carries like guilt and stuff like that. but also he idolizes his father, and like he'll say things like, Murdoch's always get up, or whatever line.
Yeah.
But I think that stuff is really compelling and really cool, and I didn't remember it that much from my first watch in 2015.
Those Murdoch boys.
Yeah.
They got the devil in them.
Oh man, what a cool line.
That's I think they said their grandma said that or something. But yeah, his connection with his dad is a really cool and important element of the show. I really like the way that they tied in so much to his character. And the neighborhood idolizes his dad too. People go, "Hey, you're Battle and Jack's son," or his signs are still up in the gym, Fogwell's gym, that say Battle and Jack Murdoch versus Creel, or I think it's Creel.
I think it's Creel, or something like that.
He was a figure known in the neighborhood because he was a fighter who kind of made a name for himself from Hell's Kitchen, and people from Hell's Kitchen will probably cling on to stuff like that because it's a rough neighborhood where not a lot of people get to fame, or get. I mean, he wasn't rich, but he built a name for himself by being somebody who always got up.
I think he was like a local hero.
Yeah,
he wasn't rich, but he was well respected.
Out of respect, exactly.
Yeah. It's something I just thought of that I hadn't really, like, when you were talking, it just kind of clicked. But it's kind of like a theme in the show, I guess you could say, is like the legacy of these two main characters' fathers, because,
Wilson Fisk.
Yeah, Battle and Jack is like, good. Ultimately is good. And then you have Bill Fisk, who is kind of awful. Yeah, and like beats his mom and stuff.
Bill Fisk wanted to be a politician and wanted to look good in front of people, but he had no ability to maintain any upstanding character behind closed doors. And so Wilson grew up to be just like his dad. He wants people's respect. He claims he wants to improve the city. He claims he wants to be this shining symbol for the city of New York. And he also eventually, as we know, wants to be a politician later on. Looks like it's going to be in Born Again, just like his dad wanted to be in politics. But behind closed doors, he's doing these horrible things. And then Matt is just like his father, Battling Jack, because his dad was a fighter. And Matt is known, he says early in the season that people said fighting his dad was like hitting oak, that he was known for getting up off the canvas. That's what Matt brings to being Daredevil. He might not be in the ring, but like the way Punisher in season 2 talks about a battleground, he treats the city like his battleground. Daredevil treats the city like his ring. He fights like his dad, and he believes in persisting and never giving up. He gets that from his father, and then the morality aspect, obviously partly coming from religion, but it also comes from his father's unwillingness to work for these organized crime bosses. That's why Sweeney, who is the organized crime boss who organized his father's death, because he refused to throw that match, sets up the rest of Daredevil's life, where he's basically fighting organized crime. Because who's the main overarching villain of the 3 seasons of Daredevil is Kingpin, is a figure for organized crime. So he's fighting the same battle his dad was, and Kingpin's fighting the same battle his dad was. It's cool that you bring that up, because the parallel with their fathers is like they both kind of turn into them in their own way.
Yeah.
Where does the story go on from here?
Whoop. Episode 2, that episode's basically entirely in Claire's apartment. So episode 2, another cool name is called Cutman. If you don't know what a Cutman is, it's the guy in the corner in the ring who deals with cuts and bruises and stuff for the fighters, because a lot of times if you get hit really hard, you'll have a cut above your eye or something. Your Cutman's the guy who tries to stop it from bleeding and tries to decrease the swelling so that you can still see through that eye and finish your fight. So she's his Cutman. Daredevil Night Nurse, or Claire, who's played by Rosario Dawson, shows up in this episode. They dig her and a kid who lives in her apartment dig Matt out of a dumpster, and great dialogue here. This is a cool episode because basically Claire is a surrogate audience member. She, like us in episode 2, if we were watching it for the first time, don't really know exactly why Matt's doing what he's doing or what he can do. They do a really good job of visually showing us in this show, visually and auditorily, without actually using words. Displaying to us, I should say, that he is using his powers. So we know he can hear heartbeats and use it to tell the truth, because they do a really good job of displaying that on screen in episode 1. But he actually tells her in this episode, because she's a surrogate audience, he explains all this stuff to her. She later in the episode says that she's got an idea of who he is because she works in the ER at night. She's seen his victims coming through. She's seen or people he saved have come through. And she's heard people telling stories of a hero who beat up a mugger, that was attacking them. And so that's why she pulls him out of the dumpster. That's why she helps heal him instead of calling the police, because she believes in what he's doing. And he explains and justifies it to her. Guys, I don't know if you remember how incredibly bloodied he is at the beginning of this episode, but she at one point says his lung is collapsing and has to like release air from his chest cavity so his lung doesn't collapse. And later, like that night, is when he does the hallway fight scene. So it's so crazy the level of resilience this character displays by the end of the episode. But just to super quickly say what happens, she helps heal him. A member of the Russian gang shows up, disguised as a police officer, trying to track down Daredevil. She lies, but he can tell she's lying. Daredevil knocks him out. They bring him up to the roof. They interrogate him, stab him, beat the crap out of him, and get him to tell them where the kid is. Daredevil throws him off the roof, probably 4 or 5 stories into a dumpster, and then he goes to find the kid and has an epic hallway fight scene where he beats the crap out of all the gangsters and picks the kid up and takes him out of the clutches of the Russian mob.
You want to go first, Aaron? I got a couple thoughts on that.
What do you got?
So, to jump back a little bit to what you were saying about how she knows about him, I think that's kind of a really cool, creative way to make it make sense that character knows about him. Because, most of the time it's like, this vigilante has been in the newspaper, on the news, and that's how everybody knows about him. But, like, she has kind of like a, first-hand experience seeing kind of the aftermath of him.
It also does a dual function too, because it shows us that Matt is making a difference. That word of what he's doing could possibly cause fear in criminals, could inspire other people to do good. Its word is actually spreading to random people. So he's and also a cool insight into how he started this before the series. Instead of us starting the series with a version of Matt Murdock who has to fumble and learn, he is an established, experienced fighter who's been doing this for a little while.
Yeah.
Interrupt your train of thought?
Yeah, a little bit, but it's okay. Somebody else say something. I'll think of what I was going to say.
In here.
I wouldn't know. I'm wearing sunglasses. But what I personally really like about this episode is it shows how brutal Matt is. Because when he takes that Russian mobster, first of all, has no hesitation in him to take people out. When the guy walks away, Claire's like, I convinced him. He's like, he didn't believe you. He instantly is so quick on his feet to think. He grabs the fire extinguisher, patiently waits for him to be just at the right point at the bottom of the stairs, drops it 3-4 stories, hits this guy on the head. I mean, I don't even know. He's so aware with his powers, I guess, that he knows what people can and can't survive and has an idea of the force that these people can take. But I want to be like, Matt, they can't take a hit like you can. You just dropped a heavy metal object onto his head from 3 stories. Luckily, the guy does survive an incredible amount of punishment, but he beats him to get the information out of him. And then there's a great line where he tells him, he's like, I'm not just doing this to save the kid. I'm doing this because I like it. And it's great because it shows the intimidation of his character, but it also really is the first starting point of a theme for the rest of the season, which is Matt teetering on the edge. Because we as the audience, Matt himself and his friends later on in the series, don't really know where his head's at in terms of if he has total control of himself. Because he's hinting at further along in the series that he wants to kill Kingpin, and we don't know if he's capable of stopping himself, because that's what Matt keeps telling himself. He keeps saying when he talks to his, what is it, a pastor or is it a...
Priest.
When he talks to the priest, he keeps saying, like, he doesn't know if he can stop himself. He doesn't know if he should stop himself. So this is, I think, the first inkling we get that he's not just out there like Superman. He's not just out there completely altruistically. He likes taking the hits. He likes giving the hits. He relishes somewhat in the violence.
This is the episode that he threw him off the roof.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, because the guy says some snide comment like, he's like, if it's not me, it'll be someone else. And he's like, and they'll end up right where you are. And he's like, he's like, I hope you get there in time to see the kid die or something like that. And then he knocks him off the roof, drops him down to the dumpster. And Claire's like, I thought you didn't kill people. And he's like, he stops.
He'll survive.
He's breathing.
That's what I was going to say is this show does a very good job of like making it to where Daredevil doesn't kill. But then the people that like
He doesn't kill though.
Do you guys think he has? Well, first of all, I mean, he kills Nobu, and I feel like he kills Nobu.
Nobu kills himself. That's what I'm saying.
But
does he though? The show does a very good job of protecting the fact that he's not killing anybody. But
I feel
people
like
just are dying and dying and dying.
I feel like when they showed the oil leaking out of the drum, that was them showing us that Matt was hearing, sensing, aware of the oil on the ground. I feel like that was insinuating that he knew that if a spark went off, that Nobu would die.
But Nobu makes the spark go off.
Daredevil throws his billy club, and Nobu knocks it out of the way. And when he knocks it out of the way, it hits the... It seems like Daredevil basically caused this man to die.
I don't know. I think, I mean, yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's so, like, close to him being the killer. But then there's, like, that argument where he's like, he didn't actually, like, when he fights that psychopath guy, he basically has killed him because he made him say Fisk's name. So then the guy just kills himself.
Yeah, I think that's way further than the Nobu example, though. That guy just committed.
Yeah, I don't know.
What about the guy that just got thrown off the roof and is falling in the dumpster? Who's going to find him in time before he dies in the dumpster?
Yeah.
Well, he might be breathing when Daredevil left him.
I think they call for him because he's in the season later and he's in a hospital bed. Every bone in his body looks like it's broken. He has a tube down his throat. He's in a coma. I think his heart is like barely beating. So
how's that guy end up dying? Because that's another, like, he threw him off the roof. He survives that fall. And then I know the Russian guys go in and they shoot him with
adrenaline,
that Russian
and
stuff.
then pull his intubation tube out. I think that leads to him dying. I don't know if they show him dying, but I feel like that probably led to him dying.
I can't really remember how he dies, but
I don't think you can just shoot up somebody on the
conveniently.
With
he just dies.
They staked him in the chest with like adrenaline, and then they were like, "Hey, tell us where he is." I don't think that the medical team was probably able to recover from that. I mean, what do you guys think about the argument that how much better is it to leave somebody in that state than to have just killed him?
I mean, it depends on how, like, that guy, terrible guy. You know, so I think it's probably fine.
Yeah, but
to kill him or to leave him?
To leave him all, like...
Yeah, no, but not the justification of, is it okay to do that to him? The justification of, is it better or worse to have just killed him?
Oh, I think it's probably worse to just kill him. Because then that line between who the heroes are and who the villains are and the anti-heroes, it doesn't matter. Because...
But if every person he encounters with is eating out of a straw and can't barely move their fingertips...
This is the same argument that we've had for Batman in the past.
Yeah. I think, like, he's not killing them, like... Obviously, some guys he beats way worse than he beats some other guys. Like
directly killing them.
Like later,
possibly.
Right. Later in the season, like when they're doing the trial for that psychopath guy, there's like this low-level criminal who's like, I go past the building if the light's on, I have a job. And so, like, Matt beats him up, but then he sends him on his way. He's like, leave the city and don't return or whatever. And then the guy who's trafficking kids, he beats way worse. So, like, yeah, and there's, like, later in the season, too, he fights the Potter guy. Melvin Potter, and he doesn't beat him that bad because that guy's not really that bad.
Dude, I was watching that. It's been so long since I watched it. He's beating this guy senseless, and then the guy starts talking like a little kid, and I just know Daredevil was like, oh no.
Yeah.
Oh my god. No. He's like, I've been beating the shit out of this guy. He's like, Daredevil's about to get canceled. You can't do that, Daredevil.
That's his downfall.
Oh my god,
couldn't sense it ahead of time, I guess.
They also just play jump rope with Melvin's like mental faculties. Like,
yeah.
They're like, oh, he's mentally challenged, but then he's not when the plot doesn't require him to be. I don't really understand it.
Yeah, well, he's really only in like 2 scenes in the first season at least, and yeah, and like he doesn't have too much dialogue that I remember in the first scene he's in, and then when he shows up and Matt's in the office, he's like, you shouldn't be here, and he sounds like normal, you know.
They treat him like he has the mindset of the child, but at the same time that he is capable of designing his own fabrics that are bulletproof and flexible.
Well, I think that's kind of plays into like maybe it's obviously a little bit tuned up because it's a TV show, but you know, sometimes like a savant will have like, you know, issues or whatever, but then they can really succeed in you know, whatever, like remembering.
I don't feel like that it's displayed like it's autism, but I don't.
Well, it doesn't
This is a bit of a
necessarily be
rabbit hole.
autism, but yeah, like.
Well, that's where
just like
that's
I
where
think
the
it's just.
that's where the savants come from. Autistic savants.
Oh well, I don't know, but I think he's supposed to be like kind of like a savant because, like you said, he's got these mental deficiencies, but then there's this one thing that he's like really, really good at.
Yeah, because autism is more of a social disorder than it and having to do with. Oh, but anyway, I digress.
Isn't episode 2 the hallway fight?
Yes, at the very end, which it's hard to remember that it comes that early in the season because it's basically the high of the season. But
It's for sure the best fight.
it's an amazing fight, so well choreographed. I want to talk about too while we're here the lighting and the production design of the season, how strong they are. I feel like they get such good locations, and all the locations seem to have this. Just everything. You can look at it and say it feels like Hell's Kitchen. A scene with Kingpin in a nice apartment doesn't look like Hell's Kitchen, but you know when you're about to see Daredevil walk around the corner because the walls are grungy. Usually they're using this green and yellow lighting or green walls and yellow lighting. That's kind of their color tone throughout the show is a lot of green and yellows, and a lot of street lighting outside the windows. So a lot of windows are just opaque, but with a bright yellow light shined on them. And I feel like it works so well to where there are scenes where they show the New York skyline and it looks great when they do it, but I think that they time it well where every window isn't just a green screen so that when they do it, it looks great because a lot of the windows, like I said, are opaque with a light shined on them, whether it's purple light in Claire's apartment, purple light in Matt's apartment, yellow light in Karen's apartment. They use this so that outside the window, you don't have to make it look like New York. But then when they decide to show the city sparingly, they can make it look phenomenal. Like outside the high-rise view in the daytime of Wilson Fisk's apartment, it always looks so good. Like I could believe that's a location shooting. I don't know that it's not. It could be, but it looks fantastic.
I think. See, I don't really pay so much attention to like the science behind the lighting and stuff like that because like to me
Science.
I'm colorblind, so like I just watch it and it like it looks good or it looks bad, whatever, and like the colors and hues and all that don't really like land on me, I guess. But I will say that I think it's in episode 2. I could be wrong, but it's the scene where Matt takes Karen back to his apartment and like he gives her a shirt and he's like talking about how he got a big discount because that big huge light is like, and the way it's lighting his apartment, that scene looks really good.
Well, all these scenes, they love to light dark scenes throughout the show, and it's part of what helps the show feel gritty is either shooting at night when they're outside, shooting inside in dark locations, shooting in parking garages, alleys. It's always super dark, so it makes really cool creative lighting opportunities, and I'm glad that they decided to go with yellow as more of a theme as opposed to red. I think red would have seemed super heavy-handed, and there are scenes with red, and it looks really good, but they don't hammer in the red just because it's Daredevil. And yellow also feels like an homage back to the original suit for Daredevil, which was yellow when it was introduced.
I dig it.
I don't really like the yellow lighting and green lighting too much.
Why not? I feel like it helps it feel like dirty and like.
To me, I don't really even notice it. Like, I mean, obviously I can tell like the scene's lit a different, like certain ways or whatever. But like, I wouldn't have ever been like, oh, it's like they're using yellow and green lights. I don't know. It just is over my head, I guess.
Do you guys enjoy it being dark? I know that was a complaint of yours when we initially watched The Batman. And I think there have been points to me where I wish it was a little bit brighter. Very, very few and far between. This is even going out of season 1. But in season 2, when they first change his suit and they unveil the suit, the first 2 times you see it, it's so dark, I can't even see the details of the suit. And then it's not till like much later in the episode that I can actually see the suit. I think if you're unveiling it, I want to be able to see more detail of the suit. But most of the time, I like that they shoot really dark. I think it helps with the believability that he could win these fights because the villains can't see as well, and he doesn't need light to see. It also plays into character elements, and it also just looks cool because when they use colored lighting or when they use creative lighting, it shines starkly in the nighttime.
Yeah, I like that it's dark.
I do too.
I don't have any problem with that. I mean, part of cinematography is the absence of light. It's not just how you're lighting the scene, but also where you're choosing not to light to really draw attention to a specific area. So I like that it's dark. I like that they don't work too hard to like overly light his silhouette or anything because he is wearing all black, so he does tend to blend in with the background. I think they do a well enough job of like still showing where he is without like making sure that the back of him's lit up really well so you can like for sure see that that's Daredevil right there, you know. So yeah, I like that it's really dark.
I think we talked about it a little bit off camera, but one thing you mentioned to me about John Wick is they have a lining in his suit to make it a little bit a touch of color, right? It's like silver or something like that, so light reflects off of it. And I think there's a little red line that goes on Daredevil's suit, and I was wondering if maybe they designed that into character not only as a nod towards Daredevil's obvious red colors in his eventual suit, but also to give the light something to catch because he's wearing all black head to toe. He's wearing black combat boots, pants, black shirt, and a black mask and gloves. So basically everything he's wearing eats light other than the skin tones that are his jawline only.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he does have like the stitching of the shirt is red, like you said. I don't think it's red like that in season 3 when he's back to wearing the.
Yeah, I'll have to check. I'm halfway through season 2 right now. You just finished season 1, right?
Today, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm in like episode 7 of season 2, and oh my god, guys, can't wait till we cover that episode next week. Punisher's amazing,
bro. Punisher is the best, and
it's so good.
Yeah, John Berthal plays the Punisher.
Every scene with Punisher, I'm so locked in. But let's go. Maybe we'll start going through these episodes a couple at a time. So episode 3 is called Rabbit in a Snowstorm. It introduces us to Wilson Fisk directly, Wesley's employer. We don't say his name. He goes by many names. But that shows him buying the painting from Vanessa, having the first date with her. It shows the Russian guy showing up to try and make the deal with him, and he gets offended because he interrupts his date with Vanessa, so he beheads him with a car door. Shows the brutality of Kingpin. And then in that episode might be the one where we see the case we talked about a couple times where that murderer kills the head of the taxi company, and then Matt and Foggy defend him. That's in episode 3, I believe. Then episode 4 is called In the Blood. 2 vicious Russian brothers working for Fisk strike back against Daredevil. Fisk moves to further consolidate his power in the criminal underworld. So I think through these episodes too, we're getting a lot of the development of Karen and Ben's relationships, where she first reaches out to him. She goes and talks to that Fisher guy's widow and tries to convince her not to take the money so that they can still talk about the Union Allied scandal that they're trying to shut up. She says it doesn't sit right with her. She can't sleep well. So she finds Ben to go and break that story. Episode 5, World on Fire. These episodes are all rated 8.5 and above, by the way. Incredible IMDb ratings. Fisk, in episode 5, it says, Fisk moves forward with plans that threaten to rip Hell's Kitchen apart. Murdoch and Foggy take on a case helping tenants victimized by a slumlord. So this is where we probably get into what some people's complaints are with the show, so I'll stop here to discuss this with you guys. We get into the Miss Cardenas storyline, and I think it has a good emotional thread in the story, but it also becomes a big focus of the show, this tenant case with the slumlord. I don't know if you remember his name.
Tully. Senor Tully.
Tully, yeah. Armand Tully, thank you. But Tully is trying to force people out of the apartments, but it's basically everything leads back in the show to Wilson Fisk, which is another great tie-in. Wilson Fisk wants all these people out of the apartments so that he can take the slums and like build them up and try to make New York. He's basically trying to like gentrify Hell's Kitchen and make it more wealthy and affluent. But it's also because he's got all these plans and these people are in the way of his, criminal goings-ons. But I think Mrs. Cardenas is an interesting character who I feel like the audience can fall in love with pretty easily because she's a sweet old lady. She gets offended when people curse around her. You're like, oh, she's so sweet and gentle. But it is a lot of investigative, a lot of law procedural stuff, and a lot of talking. And this might be where some people fall out. Aaron, you talked about this is kind of getting to the middle of the show. It's episode 5. Does any of this portion of the show bug you guys? Because in rewatching it, this portion of the show didn't feel slow to me.
I agree. I didn't think it felt slow. I enjoyed it. I was gonna jump back because we're talking a little bit about like episode 5 or whatever right now. But whenever the Russian guy shows up to the restaurant and that causes Fisk to chop his head off with a door, to me, even all these years later, besides that first hallway fight, that's the scene that like sticks in my head the most. Like that's like such a brutal ending to that character, who's not like a good guy, who's not like you're like rooting for this guy or anything like that. But he is the more sensible of the two Russian brothers, and then he tries to do what he thinks is the best move, and it ends up with his head cut off, and it's referenced later in the show.
And Fisk is enacting all these brilliant plans behind the scenes too, because even after he kills him, he works it into his schemes. He knows he wanted to eliminate the Russian brothers from the beginning, so now he's trying to, for these multiple episodes, he's trying to distract the remaining brother, just putting him off balance, making him think that he hired Daredevil to kill this guy, having him chasing down Daredevil. But in reality, he's laying the seeds for Madame Gao's plan, an operation conjoined with his, to blow up all of the Russian safe houses and take them out of the picture so that Kingpin can assume they're part of the operation and then he's not splitting money with another person.
Do you remember the brother's name? Not Vladimir, the one who survives longer, the other one?
Something else extremely Russian.
Alexei, maybe? I don't know. But there's a scene later, way towards the end, where Matt, and as Daredevil says to Ben Urich, he's like, keep your head down, while this is going on. And Ben Urich's like, I think my head's fine where it's at. And then Daredevil's like, yeah, I think that, Alexei thought that too. And he's like, damn, he did just get his head cut off. But, yeah, I don't know. I enjoy it all. The Mrs. Cardenas stuff is Anatoly. Yeah, there you go. The Mrs. Cardenas stuff, I think, is compelling. It kind of, they do, I think, a pretty good job of connecting, not so much Matt, but Foggy and Karen to her. So that way, when she's killed off, you actually kind of care about it. It's not just like, oh, there was this one minor character that like they killed off, but this death actually kind of is, you feel it. It's not just like a insert random standing character here. Oh, they got killed off.
Yeah, they have her in multiple episodes.
Doesn't that also kind of put pressure on like Matt Murdock and balancing the Daredevil kind of persona? Because
he does such a bad job in season 1. He's like not
Aaron, like starting to be like, where were you? Like all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I think it adds to the story well,
Yeah. They just keep making up, basically saying that he fell or got injured because he's blind.
Yeah.
Which, like, for some of it, it's a very good, believable excuse because they just fully think he's just, blind, and I wouldn't say incapable, but since he's blind, he's more prone to potentially falling and bumping into things. And then there's scenes where he plays being an average blind guy really well. Like in his own apartment, he's like feeling in the air for a chair and then he finds it. And like, but
he only does that.
He knows exactly where the chair is.
He only does that when other people are present, which is such a, if you pay attention to it, he does such a good job of that. Whenever there's somebody in the scene who doesn't know he has radar sense. So if somebody goes to hand him something, like he knows they're going to, right? He'll reach or like they go to hand him a phone and he'll like find it eventually. They like move it towards him. Or if he's walking through his house, he touches the wall as he's walking down that long hallway just to get a feel for where he is in the room, where the wall ends. But then when somebody's in the room, like after Foggy's aware of his powers, he stops doing that. And Elektra in season 2, when she finds out he has his powers, she's throwing stuff to him. Keys. He's kept like incredible details like this are, if you look for them, they're always there because the show has such minute and accurate attention to detail.
Yeah, I noticed too, like handshakes. Like every time he shakes a hand, he just puts his hand out
and waits
and lets them come to him, which is like, it's just cool that he like balances that, not using his powers.
He has to be
basically
fully aware constantly because he could very easily when
go ahead.
When Elektra discovers his powers in season 2, she just swings at him with a kick and he dodges it. But it's like 1, instinct, 2, he's younger, 3, didn't want to get kicked.
Right.
But outside of instinctually protecting yourself, which most people wouldn't punch or swing at a blind guy, she's just a maniac. He's so on top of maintaining that persona.
I like too the like way they kind of talk about or show Foggy and his relationship, because like to Foggy, he's kind of like an aide to Matt, where that when they interact with people aren't used to interacting with a blind guy, so they'll nod or they'll like make a face or whatever, and he kind of translates that to Matt. But then later in the season, when I think it's Nelson v. Murdoch, he finds out he's Daredevil. They're having a conversation, I think in the gym, and Foggy's like, I nodded, but you could tell that, right? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, it's cool because he like allowed Foggy to kind of like, I don't know, handle some of those interactions with other people for all those years when he didn't need it. And Foggy always thought he was being helpful. And then now it's like, to Foggy, it's just like another layer of like
fooled,
tricked,
and lied to. He also constantly holds Foggy's arm anywhere they walk. Which, as part of the illusion, he doesn't actually need to do it, but it's a cool friendship thing for them. Like they're always connected when they're going places like that.
In that flashback scene where they're like drunk or whatever, and they're walking, he's like, I know the stairs are coming up. Where are they? And like, he knows damn well where the stairs are at, but he's like, I just like that part of their relationship.
He's also faking so hard that he's showing that he remembers where things are. Like, he's not overplaying the part where he just goes to walk off the stairs. He's like any actual blind person would know the general layout of the walk to their dorm and be like, I know the stairs are close. Mm-hmm. He's putting on an Oscar-worthy faking being blind performance.
Yeah, he's so good. He's just so good at this.
You know what all that is? That's all really good directing.
Yeah.
Paying attention to those little details, like those are all like purposeful things that go into the performance. And it's hard to keep track of little details like that, especially when you're making 13 episodes, and I'm sure they're like kind of mixing up scenes. I'm sure it's not all filmed in like chronological order, so it's like they're making an intent. They're having intention behind each like moment and scene of like, all right, is he aware of what's going on? Is he supposed to not be aware? And it's really cool that they're paying attention to those little details, because that's something that could have easily been just like kind of pushed to the side.
Well, they also have to be super aware of the bodily choreography of Charlie Cox at all times, because when people know that he has powers in the room and he's free to not fake. Again, I'm going to go back to season 2. I'm sure there's examples in season 1, but like I said, I'm currently watching season 2. But Elektra keeps throwing him stuff, and he has to catch it without looking. So Charlie Cox has talked about this in interviews outside of the show. He's talked about how hard those scenes are to film when people in the room know that he is Daredevil, because he has to do things without looking, because there'd be no reason for him to look or fumble around. So he pours her Elektra a drink, but he has to just grab the glass without looking, fill the glass, stop pouring it at the right time, hand it to her all without like he reaches in a drawer to like pull out the bottle without looking. All these small details, but it makes it harder for it to act, but it makes it like when you're looking for it, it makes it so good and believable that he's Daredevil, and he does it in fight choreography all the time. He dodges attacks that come from behind because he doesn't need to actually see them. Or if somebody walks across the room, he can't follow them like this because it wouldn't make any sense. He's not using his eyes to perceive them. So they have such a good level of attention to detail with that constantly.
If anything, he's like moving his ear towards what's happening,
Let me move my radar antenna.
While you pull up the next couple episodes, I was going to say, now that we're a little bit more into the season, I didn't remember how much they use his powers. Not so much like the radar sense thing, because that's kind of how he operates. So it's always going on. But like
a sense of touch. And
there's like a scene where he like is meditating to heal faster. There's like, that's kind of the main example I'm thinking of right now. But there's multiple instances where he's like using his powers, and on the surface of my memory, like I didn't remember that the show got into his powers that much. Like I just kind of remembered like, he just kind of knows everything.
Yeah, when he asks,
because he's perceiving things with his senses. But yeah, he does other things that are way more comic booky, like meditating to heal himself faster, and they show the world on fire vision, like for a quick second when he's talking to Claire, and I didn't remember that scene. But like, it's cool that they actually sprinkle in those comic book elements where the shows are like supposed to be way more realistic.
I like the way they use other aspects of his power besides his hearing. Like when he says that he could tell that Night Nurse opened one of her wounds because he could like taste the mercury in the air or something like that.
Iron, yeah.
Like iron. So he can like taste stuff in there. He touches fabrics. He says to Stick that he uses silk sheets because cotton feels like sandpaper on his skin because his sense of touch is so heightened. I like when they use the increased senses more than just the hearing because his sense of touch can be so useful too. Like he feels the fabric of the suit when he first gets into Melvin Potter's place. He's like, oh, what is this? He's investigating it.
Yeah.
But that episode we just talked about episode 5 ended with the bombs going off between the plan of Madame Gao and Kingpin blowing up all the Russians. Vladimir still managed to escape. Daredevil hunts him down, but then the cops go to get him, and he escapes from the cops, beats up a bunch of cops while handcuffed, which is insane. That's what's here. That's got to be the most unbelievable feat. Probably not the most unbelievable, but top 5 through the show. Handcuffed behind his back, takes out like 5 SWAT geared up cops with assault rifles, like, or handguns at least. He takes them all out just using martial arts, like, and his hands are stuck together. Then he takes Anatoly, gets to an abandoned building where they eventually get cornered. And this is one of the highest rated episodes. I think it's rated like 8.7, yeah. And, nope, this episode's 8.9, yeah. So I'm on episode 6 now, Condemned. And he has that walkie-talkie conversation with Kingpin. He has that rookie cop come in who's not guilty. And this episode really highlights why Daredevil has to do what he does, which is something I always say I like about Batman Begins, but it shows why he has to work outside the system. He can be a great lawyer all day, but he has to fight this corruption on a different level because it's spread to politicians, it's spread to the law, it's spread to the DA, it's spread to the cops. We have one innocent cop here who comes into the warehouse and Daredevil has to knock him out. But when the other cops get to him, they just knife him. So even when there is one good person, they're getting killed by the other corrupt police. So it highlights why Daredevil has to do what he does and he can't go about it through conventional channels.
I'm glad you brought that cop up because when I was watching that episode, I was like, dang, like that's kind of another like, it's just so small. It's such a small portion of the show, but it's like, man, when you really think about it, it's really sad. And like, it really adds to the emotionality of the show. And like you just kind of explained, but it's like, dang, you have this young cop who's just got off the force. Or just got out of the academy. He's been on the force for a few months. And he's, you know, in our heads, he's one of the good guys, you know, and, he just gets wrong place at the wrong time. They don't know what Daredevil told him, and so they just kill him. Like, he's just so expendable to them.
Kind of blame Matt for that one a little bit, too, to be honest. He left him with his hands tied behind his back.
It's another example of, like, people dying.
But it's not
that
him.
Matt has interacted with, but he didn't actually kill him.
He's like, I didn't kill him. Oh, but Matt, he's dead because of you. But I didn't kill him.
Yeah.
That's the key difference there. But that episode has some great lines, dialogue between Wilson Fisk and Daredevil talking on the walkies. Wilson's like, I admire your conviction. One lone man set out to make a difference with just his fists. And he's like telling him that
Fisk.
He's telling him that I got to do like the hand thing too, like.
Yeah.
He's like he tells them that they're alike, and Matt's like, we're nothing alike. But it's cool. They are good character foils in terms of writing. They're both people who are trying to do good through unconventional and frankly dark and twisted means. You know, from a lot of people's perspective, Matt beating people to a bloody pulp with his bare hands is a horrible, violent, bad thing to do, and Wilson Fisk is just doing the same thing on a bigger scale with paying a bunch of people to, not the same thing. He's attempting to have the same consequences, going about it with slightly different methods. But I think that they're actually kind of similar in terms of just being people with goals to make the city a better place and willing to sink their hands into the mud to do it.
So you're telling me they're both bad guys?
I don't think Daredevil's a bad guy.
I had it, lost it, had it again, and lost it again.
Just interrupt me.
No, I was going to say, this happens twice that I really remember in season 1, but I like this aspect of Fisk because, you know, for all his flaws, he's a murderer, he like blackmails people, all these bad things he does, he's not a liar.
He's bald.
He's bald. He always tells the truth. Like, he doesn't really, well...
Well, two.
Dude, he does lie
The
actually.
people he's about to
Because
kill.
like he told a lie about the Russian brother getting killed or whatever.
Well,
But he had Wesley tell that
he also
lie.
lies to the general public. Like in general, he comes out as this upstanding citizen.
Yeah, so maybe the point I was making is not completely true, but
He's brutally upfront when it comes to.
when he talks to Daredevil on the radio, and then when he talks to Ben right before he kills him, I think
When
he's being
You brought my
truthful.
mother into this, Mr. Urich.
When he thinks that the person is like a peer.
Yeah.
He
When he
has,
respects them, that's a good
for
point.
them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think
okay.
he respects Ben Urich. He respects his convictions, just like he does for Daredevil.
Yeah.
He's very capable of respecting people, even though he hates them.
Yeah, that's what I was getting ready to say. Is like I love those two conversations because I feel like he's being truthful when he says things like, "I admire your convictions," or like,
He's being truthful. He
"It's something
says,
that I actually
I am going
respect."
to kill you.
I haven't
now.
come to threaten you. I've come to kill you. Man, you're all right. Those are some of the best scenes in the whole show. I love this episode, Condemned. I'm glad it's so highly rated. I like when Anatoly gets on the grate with him and he's like, "I told you, I'm not going to die here," and they deadlift it off of the ground.
yeah. Yeah, what an unlikely
Well,
companion because he's
gives
been
his life
after
for
him and then he ends up dying for him and stuff.
yeah, he hangs back.
Vlad-
Which also, Daredevil lets that guy hang back with a machine gun
Right.
and shoot at the corrupt cops. So
Another
He's not like,
example,
no.
another example of like a character that's kind of in his way or whatever, getting removed conveniently, but not by him.
no, but
Body
not,
counts climbing.
not even Anatoly dying. No, it's not Anatoly.
Vladimir,
dying,
yeah.
but him letting Vladimir like shoot those cops. So,
They're bad guys though.
but he doesn't kill bad guys.
But
unless
that's
he,
what I'm saying is this is
he doesn't let Punisher kill bad guys, but he lets Vladimir kill bad guys.
it's another example of
He can
like
get away.
people getting killed, but he's like one step removed, so he's not his hands aren't that dirty. But if you're like you really are like, well,
It's like there's some blood flying across the room at you. You're looking a little bloody, Daredevil.
by association.
I love that episode, but ultimately, Matt gets away, very frustrated. Vladimir dies. Then we go on to the next episode. This is where I think, for me, the show has a little bit of a backslide starting here at like the halfway point, episode 7. I love the Stick flashbacks. I don't as much love the moments with Stick in the future. Like
I kind of feel the opposite.
I love the flashbacks because they explain how Matt got trained. We know how he got his powers. We don't know how he became a badass fighter.
Yeah.
It's from Stick, and he teaches him not only how to use his powers and train his body, but also how to train his senses. Because he teaches him with the ice cream to sense all these other things.
I feel like on the rewatch though, those scenes take a little bit longer than maybe they did on the first time through.
my main complaint about that episode is like I do dig the flashbacks because like you just said, it explains the powers. I dig the future scenes because it's kind of setting up this like B plot of like this war and stuff that's going on in the hand, and it's kind of sure there's some overlapping things like Naboo and stuff, but it's kind of separate from the Fisk storyline.
It's just annoying because it's only for Defenders. It's not actually
Yeah.
address Daredevil.
But and I don't mind that, but the thing I don't like and it's stupid little things like this that are in shows and movies that I like latch onto. I'm like, I don't really like this. But the scene where Stick like leaves him, he's like, they're doing something or whatever, and Stick's like, your real training starts tomorrow. And then Matt's like, I made you a bracelet. And then he's like,
Goodbye forever.
yeah, I'm like, well, dang. So, like, how much training, did he really do? Because he's like, oh, your real training starts tomorrow.
Well, Foggy says later you must have continued your training on your own.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying is, like, how much better how much more did he have to go with Stick? But Stick was like,
Yeah, I wish he had more training with Stick too, because then we could see him. What I said watching that episode, I was like, imagine how lethal of a fighter he would be if he had more training with Stick. He had like 2 weeks with him, and look what he can do now. Because who else could?
Maybe he would have had more blurry morals
Maybe
if he trained with
Yeah.
him more. Because Stick doesn't mind killing people, right?
no, and he doesn't want to have any, like, connections, and he's like, oh, you're being a baby about the sheets and
So
stuff.
maybe Matt would have picked up more of those tendencies if he did train with
Or
him.
maybe Stick would have picked up more of Matt's tendencies. Because in my personal opinion, what I think the plot is telling us in that episode, Stick held on to that little ice cream bracelet that he made all those years. I think Stick was afraid that he was going to get too attached to Matt because he was already feeling this bond
and that's
with
why
him.
he left. Yeah,
And that's why he left.
I agree.
So maybe Stick would have started to soften up a little bit, like Joel Miller in The Last of Us. I think that's what Stick was ultimately worried about, because he has to be able to move from place to place. He has to be disconnected. He believes that's what makes him strong, and that's why he left.
Yeah.
But who knows? Could have gone either way.
I think. Oh, go ahead.
What I was going to say is what's frustrating is there's no inkling of another person he trained with because he can't tell anybody else that he has superpowers.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you train yourself in something like martial arts?
Yeah. I don't know.
Practice.
Who could he fight? They'd be like, wait, you're blind. How am I going to fight you? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Who could he, they need to sew that up.
It's comic.
I think
It's a show.
the thing I was going to say is about the bracelet too. Like, I guess there's not really a way for them to show us that he held on to it all these years other than putting it on his person. But besides the practicalness of that, I think the story element of that is it was so important to him that not only did he keep it all those years, I mean, it's 20 years in the future, he kept it on him. He always kept it on him.
Yeah, he basically only had a duffel bag. So he has 10 possessions, and this is one of his 10 possessions.
Yeah,
It's
so
important to him.
I thought that was kind of cool. Because and that if that scene's not there, then to me, the Stick thing is just it's just what it is on the surface. He's this, general for this war or whatever, and he's trying to recruit Matt as a warrior. But the fact that he keeps the bracelet shows us that it's deeper than he's just recruiting another warrior. He looks at him as kind of like a surrogate son or however you want to call it.
I also like to think that on some layer he feels bad about all the horrible things that he does, and the bracelet reminds him that once he did something good, and helped the kid out. And I think that is a powerful thing to somebody who doesn't have a lot of moral high ground to hang on to.
Yeah.
But I think that's a great episode. I just think the Black Sky stuff kind of comes out of nowhere. They're like, oh, I'm like, is this a mutant? Is this like a X-Men mutant?
Right.
What is this?
What is a Black Sky? Yeah, and
they never explain what a Black Sky really is.
I don't think so until Defenders. I don't think it's until Defenders.
Not in season 1. And then and Stick literally kills them off screen, which is
yeah, and it never really comes back up except for the Naboo fight or Naboo or however you say it. Nobu. That fight, he kind of referenced it briefly. He's like, you caused a great deal of hardship for me or whatever, but
I showed you respect. You would be wise to return the courtesy. You'll have to earn it. Oh, that episode's so good. That episode's coming up soon. Next episode is episode 8, Shadows in the Glass. Another 8.9 episode. We get Wilson Fisk's backstory here, showing us, we already talked about this a little bit earlier, so we don't have to go deep into it.
Yeah.
But his dad was domestic abuser. Oh my God, when he takes his belt off or whatever in that scene, stuff like that always makes my skin crawl.
Yeah.
It's just something about him taking the belt off really makes me recoil in my chair. And the show absolutely makes you cheer when Wilson caves his head in with
the hammer.
A hammer. It's it's what you wanted him to do,
It's like
they write it so well.
Yeah, and it's kind of I forget what if I'm you gonna use the right term, but it's kind of cathartic.
Cathartic.
We see
Catharsis.
I don't know if that's the right word, but we see in real life there's real pieces of shit that do things like that, and they get away with it, or they go to jail. But
not 12
I feel like
Fisk was there.
There's a part of people, that's kind of wanting more, and then the show kind of obviously it's not real, so you can kind of indulge. It's kind of like playing Grand Theft Auto. You can indulge in the fact that
it's a different kind of catharsis.
This piece of shit got his comeuppance. He got killed for treating his family like that, and that doesn't always happen in real life.
Yeah, and in the coming episodes too, if not that one, he tells Vanessa about it too, which is crazy.
Yeah.
And Ben Urich and Karen Page find out about it by talking to his mom at the nursing home. Super fancy nursing home. They get the information out of her, so quite a few people become aware of this throughout the series, but definitely a defining moment for Wilson Fisk in
I think something that I do find a little bit annoying is how...
Is it that Wilson Fisk could commit genocide and Vanessa would be like, I love you?
Yeah, well, that is kind of wild. But what I was going to say is the Karen Page stuff, how much she believes that him killing his dad is a smoking gun. she's like, you gotta print this story. It's gonna show that he's lying. It doesn't, like, to me, it's not as big of a deal as she like is making it out to be, because the guy is a piece of shit. Like, if it was like, oh, he just killed like another kid or something, when he was a kid, but he like killed his abuser and his mom's abuser.
Yeah, but how crazy would it be for you to hear that partner that you were dating killed their parent regardless of their atrocities?
Yeah, but I mean,
crazy news to get.
He told her. I'm talking more about like the fact that Karen thinks that this is gonna like change public perception on him, and kind of Ben, like, I think Ben and a couple of them say it too, but Ben really, I think, drives the point home. He's like, so what's he gonna do after we say this? Like, he's gonna wheel out the old lady and be like, I was protecting my sweet mother, and then public perception is right where it was. Like, people are gonna.
I think people would definitely look at him with a little bit more of a scrutinizing eye, though.
Yeah, I mean, even in real life, people look at, like, when an abuser gets killed, people look at it as kind of like a success. Like, even like the Gypsy Rose stuff, like, people have that like empathy for her, where it's like, yeah, I mean, this person was like, had so much control over you.
Depends on his influence and following too. What does Homelander say after he killed people in public? He smiled and he can get away with anything.
Yeah.
Smile and wave, boys. Smile and wave. All right, so that was episode 8, Shadows in the Glass. Episode 9 is called Speak of the Devil. When Fisk gains the upper hand, the goal to destroy him becomes even more difficult, while Daredevil faces his own demon. So this is the episode. It's edited really interesting. I wondered how you felt about that. It starts with the fight between Daredevil and Nobu and cuts that fight in between the rest of the episode. It's not what we would traditionally get, where it starts with the fight and then they play everything that happens up to there and then we catch up with the fight. There's pieces of the fight and in the middle of the episode as well.
Yeah, to me, I kind of would have preferred it if the episode went chronologically.
I think it kind of messes up the fight, doesn't it? Because you don't get to experience the fight all at once.
Yeah, that, and just like, I don't know. I think to me it would have just flowed better if it went chronologically. It doesn't ruin it or anything for me. I just think I'd prefer it the other way.
Well, then if it went that way, maybe we're thinking, oh wow, like the first 40 minutes of this episode are kind of slow. Nothing's really.
And that could have been why they did.
And
going on at all. But instead they split it up into 3 or so pieces, and now it's throughout the episode that there's some action going on.
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely like, because I didn't really even think about that in the when I watched it. The thing that I thought of was like, when it starts with the fight, like you said, and I was like, that's not how the last episode ended. Yeah. So I went back and was like, oh, okay.
I threw you off that much, huh?
Yeah, because I just was like, did I miss something? But that was my only thought. Yeah.
Just to quickly say what happens in this episode. This is when Miss Cardenas has died. They go to her funeral. Matt gets so furious because Miss Cardenas has been knifed by some random mugger in the building. They tried to give this big payout to the tenements in the tenement slumlord case with Armin Tully. And Miss Cardenas was one of the big holdouts. She wanted to she was planning to rally the neighborhood together and get everybody to plant their roots and stay in the home so that they couldn't shove everybody out. And then she gets knifed by some random mugger, and they assume that it's organized by Wilson Fisk, which it is.
Yeah.
Because they're trying to get her out of the way because she's an obstacle to them clearing out these slum apartments. And Matt's so furious about this that he goes and hits the streets. He finds the guy who killed her, has to stop himself from killing him, but gets the information out of them to find where Fisk is going to be. He shows up to this warehouse where he's not sure what he's going to do. Like he said to the priest, he's not sure if he's going to kill Wilson or if he can control himself. There's a great line in there too, in this episode or the previous one, where the priest says, "Are you struggling with the fact that you have to kill this man but don't want to, or that you want to but you don't have to?"
Yeah.
Incredible dialogue. But he shows up there hoping to find Wilson. It's not Wilson, it's Nobu. Another great line. He says, "I was hoping to find Fisk. I guess I'll have to settle for you." And they have that awesome fight where Daredevil gets insanely wounded and quote unquote doesn't exactly kill Nobu. But
let's watch it back.
After getting sliced to pieces by Nobu and those awesome swinging blades, which are a super cool weapon, then this ballsy dude threatens to take on Kingpin, and Kingpin's like, "All right, come at me." And he's like super wounded trying to swing it like a 300-pound man. He gets tossed like a rag doll, and then Kingpin's like disappointing and turns around and tells Wesley to finish him off, or the goon or whatever, second to Wesley.
They're both there. Francis.
Yeah, Francis. Yeah, good job. Good memory. But then Daredevil they get held up for a second. Daredevil gets the chance to run and jump out a window into the river. I think he like staggeringly falls into his apartment as Foggy's walking in trying to check on him. And he's like laid on the floor and pulls his mask off. And Foggy can see that he is Daredevil. That's the ending to that episode.
So a couple of things that I wanted to touch on before I forget. The guy, like the junkie who kills Mrs. Cardenas, there's a scene in there where Matt finally finds him that I really like kind of chuckled at because I was like, he's talking shit right now. He's fighting him and he's like, he likes to chew on menthols all day because it thinks it matches
smell of his disgusting breath.
Yeah, I was like, damn, Matt. And then, but another thing about that guy is like, that guy ends up getting killed, and it's like, it's like another thing that I realized. I was like, see, like
Matt tells him to turn himself in.
Matt wants that dude dead. Matt wants that dude dead. He doesn't kill himself, but that dude gets killed. And then the other thing I was going to say,
like he's holding back on Wilson then, and it's like, why are you doing that?
Well, that's the hard part about the season. Exactly what you're saying is, well, why are you basically killing all these other people who are not doing as much harm as Wilson, but you can't bring yourself to kill him?
For all his goons than you do for him.
Absolutely. The guy he knocked into the dumpster, if he put Wilson Fisk in a coma like that, he's not hurting anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you think it's because he also kind of sees him as like his challenger, his equal in a way? Or
I mean,
I respect you.
I think
so I'm not going to beat the ever-loving shit out of you.
I don't know. I don't think it's that. I think and of course this is, plot armor or whatever, but the opportunities I think don't really present themselves. Like his first run-in with Fisk is at the art gallery. And then his second run-in with Fisk is when he's all sliced up. So like really, he barely...
Look at the end of the season though. He lets him walk away in much better shape than pretty much anybody else. When in the one interaction with Turk, I think at the end of season 1, he slams his hand in the car trunk. If you fully close my hand in a car trunk, it's gonna break so many bones in my hand.
Yeah.
And I feel like Fisk gets off a lot easier than that.
Yeah, I mean, I think too, and maybe I just sound like an apologist or whatever, but like the fight where he like at the last episode and they fight, right? I think at that point he's a little more developed as the Daredevil he wants to be, the hero he wants to be, and he's kind of decided like, I'm not going to cross that line, or whatever. Like he doesn't. I don't know. To me, it all makes sense. Of like he didn't really have a chance to beat Fisk because he's all sliced up, and the next time that he sees Fisk in person is the fight that he beats him in, and like to me it makes sense because like
it's character development.
Yeah, and also like just physically, he's more ready to fight him at the end of the show than he fights him.
Don't you think you could have found him sooner?
Then because he's not all sliced up.
Yeah.
Another thing I want to talk about real quick too is the pastor. The pastor is such a compelling character. The priest is such a compelling character, and all their dialogue together is awesome.
Yeah, he hasn't really been in season 2 so far. There was one funeral. He was in like a portion, like 3 minutes of one episode in season 2, but I'm 7 episodes in, and he's not in nearly as much as he is in season 1.
I feel like that their interactions steal.
Yeah, well, I feel
steal the scene, steal a show. Like when they interact, I'm like, man, this is really compelling stuff.
I like when they're not shying away from the Catholicism aspect of Daredevil, because we talked about this recently, how Daredevil is defined by his Catholicism, by his guilt, by his sense of justice and his sense of morality, and he's such a cool character where the setup and design of his actual character has all these overlapping and intersecting qualities. Like he's blind and he's a lawyer. So the same way that Lady Justice is blind, and they say justice is blind, is a saying, is indicative of Matt's character because he's dealing out justice on the streets of Hell's Kitchen in New York. But he has that world on fire vision. He can't discriminate against his different quote unquote victims of the justice he's distributing. And then he's also a Catholic, so he's not just doling out justice in the sense of the law, but also in the sense of doling out God's justice. I think he says God created us each with an individual purpose in mind. I think he sees himself in a sense as like God's chosen warrior. He has these abilities, the same way Spider-Man thinks with these powers I have this responsibility. Daredevil thinks the same thing. He is, despite what is, you know, considered a handicap. He also has this in his eyes, in his ears, gift from God in terms of his abilities and radar sense. So there's all these cool overlapping themes with his characters. He's defined by his guilt, which is a very prominent theme in Catholicism. Catholic guilt is a saying. His guilt that his father died, that he blames it on himself, and that he doesn't want that to happen to other people and be victims of organized crime in Hell's Kitchen. So he has these powers that he knows his dad wanted him to use his head and not his fist, but his guilt of listening and hearing people hurt, which is what we'll talk about in this next episode, Nelson v. Murdoch, hearing people struggle, he can't ignore it because he knows he can do something to stop it.
Yeah.
So I love the way his character's built. I'm shocked that this isn't Stan Lee's favorite character, and it's got to be at least my favorite Marvel character now.
Two things I want to jump back on a little bit earlier episodes, but
Also the boxer element too.
yeah. I remember when we were talking about that.
He's
Yeah.
a Catholic, a boxer, a lawyer, and he's blind.
Mm-hmm.
So he's like this symbol of, you know, what we talked about earlier. How he said it's believable that he falls because he's handicapped, because he's blind. But they ironically turned that on their head and made a handicapped superhero super capable. You know, he's I think and he actually, Charlie Cox was given an award at some this Helen Keller Foundation for the Blind, because of his portrayal of a blind character in media, because it's inspiring.
Mm-hmm.
It's inspiring to people whether you have a handicap or not. And
Zach's thinking it.
yeah,
I just had
thinking it.
a dark joke
oh no,
because
I think we have
Because,
the
like-
same thought, the same
like they're blind, so they can't really see what's going on the.
performance.
no, but they actually, Netflix introduced an auditory description of some kind to this show. It was the first show to do it on Netflix because audiences requested it because the character's blind.
Yeah.
And they have it on a lot of their shows now.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I just a dark joke that just popped into my head.
But I think that the boxing aspect of his character is really cool layers too, because he's going out there and fighting like a boxer. I don't know. I love the way they designed this character with so many different layers to him.
Yeah, he's an onion.
And ogres are like onions. Got layers.
What I was gonna say is like way back when we first kind of start seeing Vanessa, and then later when Matt goes to the art gallery, all of the paintings are like a solid color with like different hues of that color. I just thought that was interesting, and like the one Matt looks at is all red and
Shitty paint.
like yeah, so that I think is interesting. Not the most interesting thing in the show, but just the way they kind of talk about the paintings is interesting.
They're impressionistic paintings, the same way you have the impressionistic world in Across the Spider-Verse, where those colors are drawn like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's also indicative of the way Matt sees the world, a quote-unquote world on fire. He sees the world like an impressionistic painting that he sees in red. So it's really cool that they have him look at that painting
Yeah,
in particular.
and he even says that. I think he says like I see like an impressionistic whatever.
When she asks him about the painting, he says like
Sounds aggressive or something like that. But another thing I was gonna say, I think this is probably like in episode 2, and it relates to the Catholicism, which like I'm not a religious guy, but this show is like it's very compelling. The like how he struggles with his beliefs and stuff like that, and he makes kind of like a little joke about it, but Claire is like, you can take a lot of punishment, and he's like, it's the Catholicism.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's really good, that line and stuff like that. And then kind of jumping back to where we were at in this next episode that we're talking about, I think it like the origin of why he starts becoming Daredevil is super compelling too, because he's like, I could hear this little girl being like assaulted by her father.
Yeah, that's the episode that we're on, episode 10, Nelson v. Murdoch.
Yeah,
that's
and
the
he's
best part
like,
of that.
he's like, I tried to go about it the way you're supposed to go about it.
Called child services. He said the dad was good at hiding it. The mom covered. Well, not the mom covered for him, but
That she wouldn't believe
She
it.
believed the dad.
And then and it's like, what choice does he really have? You know, I mean, I guess he
Listen to that every night.
he could choose to do nothing, but at the same time, he tried to do it the right way, and he has the power to do something about it. So I feel like it kind of like you said, that Spider-Man thing. Great power comes great responsibility. Nobody else is going to do anything.
And
He should step in.
and explains
Go
why
kill him.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, that guy probably, yeah, but
beats him senseless and tells him that if he ever touches his daughter again, he'll know, and he won't stop next time. And it's such a cool threat. It's such a great act of heroism, and it's blurry whether it's selfless or not, but it doesn't matter to us as the audience, because I think on some level he knows it's not altruistic. He knows he wants to be out there doing what he's doing. He's been holding himself back for a long time at that point. But how could anybody listen to that every night?
Right.
Like, and know you could do something to stop it and not do anything to stop it. So I think the audience can identify with him a lot there. I think that goes a long way towards winning Foggy over. That episode is really cool. I love that it's named Nelson v. Murdoch because their law firm is Nelson and Murdoch, but this is like a court case themed episode name. And because they're just going back and forth to each other the whole time. It's like a cross-examination. Foggy's like, oh, you've been lying to me this whole time. Like, oh, so you knew every time I was lying to you. And he's like divulging the secrets of his powers. He's like, yes, every time you lied, I knew that Karen was telling the truth. And it like explains so many things that he didn't understand in their relationship, how he always knows when a damsel in distress is in trouble and to hit on them at the right time.
Yeah, I think that's a funny joke that it's a running joke, but it kind of goes away in the later episodes. But how Nelson, Foggy's like, how do you always know they're hot?
He says, you don't show the best judgment when beautiful women with stunning character are involved. And he's like, how would I even know? He said, you always seem to.
Another cool thing I think that happens at different times in the show is like when Daredevil says something to a bad guy or a crook or whatever, and he's like, he says it to Turk in one of the later episodes. He's like,
I was thinking the same thing.
what is it, Turk?
No, I just think it's funny that you said a crook.
Oh.
When he says somebody's out there doing ballyhoo.
Yeah. Things go bump in the night. But yeah, he's like, if you go for the knife in your boot, I'll break your leg. If you go for the backup piece in your belt, like, I'll throw you off the roof. But to me, if you put yourself in the shoes of the bad guy, you're like, how the fuck? How does he know? And it's like, obviously his powers, but that's a cool mind game he can play on these bad guys. He's like, lie to me and I'll know.
Or if you go to punch him from behind and he reaches out and grabs your hand, I'd be like, what on earth am I dealing with?
Yeah, dude.
I gotta get out of town.
It's a cool mind game. I like that.
Crimes in like Kansas or something where the superheroes don't live.
Superman lives in Kansas.
Oh,
it's like
Different universe.
that's okay. He moved. I hear he moved to Metropolis.
Yeah.
Then we'll rapid fire through these last couple ones. I think that's the last important one till the finale.
You keep saying that. You're like, all right, we're going to go through these really
Get
fast.
caught up in talking. But Nelson v. Murdoch is one of my favorite episodes. I love that sequence where he explains why he does what he does to Foggy. The rest of the episode's great too because he has all this explaining to do with Foggy.
And you can, like, it's compelling because Foggy's like feeling betrayed. And because, like, you think, like,
I think he's being kind of a pussy.
I tell you guys. I mean, he does take it a little too far, but it makes sense. He's like, this is like
It's
essentially his brother.
Yeah, but
Would you not be upset if I told you I'm Daredevil?
I'd be upset, but then I feel like with all of Matt's explaining, I think he does a really good job, and I think he would have won me over. I'd also be kind of excited that he has superpowers. I would be happy on some note. I think that's kind of cool.
Can you take me flying?
Badass. But instead he's waiting for like the next 3 episodes. That's where the show gets repetitive to me. And these next 2 episodes, episode 11, Path of Righteousness, and episode 12, The Ones We Leave Behind, so much of the episode will be Matt and Foggy walking into a room at the same time, and they're like, just go ahead. You can go. And then, like, the other one leaves, and then Karen's like, when are we going to be back like we were? And he's like, I don't know that we ever will be.
No.
I don't know if Foggy can forgive me.
She doesn't know at all in season 1.
She doesn't know in season 2 either.
Issue is.
They don't say in exact terms, but like she knows that Matt shows up really hurt because it's after the Nobu fight. And she gets the idea that Foggy's lying about how he was hurt.
Yeah.
And all they tell her is like that Matt says it's his fault. He's like, it's my fault. And Foggy takes the Nelson v. Murdoch placard and throws it in the trash. Like they're not going to work together.
She does seem like she's maybe kind of starting to figure it out, but it's never like explicitly stated. Or
she still doesn't know in season 2.
They don't talk about it.
I'm halfway through season 2. She still doesn't know he has superpowers.
I feel like if I was her, I would like sit them down and be like, one of you's got to tell me what's going on.
You can't just walk out of a room every time the other one walks in and not tell me. Like we're all 3 close
Either
friends
together or separately. Someone.
Yeah.
She doesn't know. She doesn't even know she has a job. She works at Nelson and Murdoch, and they're acting like it's disbanding. So many scenes. She's like, when is this going to get better? They're like, I don't know. It gets very repetitive.
And Foggy too. He's like a dick to her. At one point, he's like, it's personal, and it's like, well, damn, you guys are sharing all this personal stuff. Like this whole show has been you guys connecting about all this personal stuff. But now she's asking a personal question and you're yelling at her.
Or like being really close to death or being captured by bad guys.
I don't like when they act like she works for them. I know she kind of does, but I like in season 2 they always call her my associate or my colleague instead of saying, "Oh, this is my secretary."
Yeah.
Because I mean, there's nothing wrong with being a secretary, but Karen does so much in Nelson and Murdoch. She's not just answering the phones for them. She's more of a paralegal. Like she's doing all the research with them and everything. So I think it's a lot more fair to give her a title instead of just saying like, I like when they give her more respect.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Their firm is really built on Karen Page in a lot of ways.
I didn't really like kind of that you're talking about this. I didn't like it in the one episode where he's like, no more long lunches until after this is over. I was like, come on, man, because you got shit to take care of.
Well, yeah, but I mean, the shit she's taking care of. I feel like I don't like the way he phrased it either. I agree with you. I felt the same. I was like, he could have talked to her more like, "Hey, Karen, can you make sure you're back?" And
right.
Instead, he talked to her like, "You're my employee.
Exactly.
Be back when your 30 minutes is done on the clock." Yeah, but she's kind of doing stuff that's extracurricular. It's important, but it has nothing to do with Nelson and Murdoch.
Right.
Imagine if we treated Zach like that for the podcast.
Hey, Zach, just make sure you're here at.
Maybe he'd be.
Oh, well, I've been fired a long time.
Yeah.
I haven't no called no show. I usually would tell you guys if I'm not gonna make it, but
No, that was. Do you remember that one time I called you? You didn't
I did
answer?
completely forget.
Yeah, that's right.
I did completely forget one time.
So
Yeah.
he has no call. No show.
He thought I forgot. He was like, I had no call, no.
No, I forgot about it. See, I'm forgetful. I've
And
done a
if
lot
you do
of bad
call,
employee
it's
things.
normally at the time that you were supposed to be here.
Well, I try, but I try, but I got kids and stuff like that. Things come up.
Yeah, more important than us, I guess. Ridiculous.
Crazy.
let's talk
Karen
about-
would never.
These last couple of things. Episode 12, the one we leave behind. That one has a really cool sequence I want to talk about where Matt is trying to follow one of the blind drug mules for Madame Gao, and he hears him get into a car that's playing classical music, and then he runs and does like all these cool stunts, this rooftop parkour. It's a really cool sequence. But what I really like about the sequence is as he's doing it, they use the audio of the classical music to tell us without saying it that Matt is following that sound to track the car. He heard it, and now he's listening to it to single out that car from all the other cars in New York. And as he's doing all this parkour, it's showing us and not telling us that's what he's doing, and it's really cool aspect of the show. They do with the sound a lot. They use the sound to tell the story without saying it.
Do you think when he's running and chasing them, he's going, parkour?
I would.
Parkour.
I think he's going.
I couldn't help myself.
myself.
I think there's a really cool shot in that parkour sequence where he like jumps and his arms are spread out and his legs are together and he like tuck and rolls.
Classic
That looks so
Daredevil pose.
cool. I was like, that's sick.
That's like a Daredevil comic cover somewhere along the way. I think him
Probably.
jumping
Oh
out,
yeah,
stuff
like
that.
diving and his
Yeah.
arms are out. Yeah.
With the Billy Clubs though, it's just a reference to it. Probably so many good little references in this show.
That was the coolest parkour part to me.
But then he uncovers all their secrets. They unveil Wilson Fisk for the fraud he is by getting the one corrupt police officer to spill his guts because he thinks that, he knows Fisk is coming to kill him to close out the loose end. I think it's Mahoney or something.
No,
like
it's
that.
not Mahoney.
No, Brett Mahoney is the one that works with them. It's the other guy.
Is it Patrick?
Patrick Mahoney.
It starts with an H. It's right on the tip of my tongue. I can't think of it though.
They get this guy who
killed his
partner, which is crazy. Again, they said they were friends before they worked together, and they worked together like 10 years.
They went to the academy together.
Yeah, they're like basically childhood friends, and he killed him, which is this guy's like the most despicable person in the show. How do you do that to your friend?
Well, he's like, how many zeros will it take? I was like, damn, he's gonna do it.
He seemed like he really didn't want to. Maybe he was scared of the retribution.
I'm sure that's
of
what it
being on
was,
Wilson
but-
Fisk's bad side. But Daredevil gets this guy and turns him into the police. He flips, and then they start going after Wilson Fisk and all his compatriots. Everybody that Madame Gao escaped. He's killed Leland Owlsley by now. But anybody that works under him, the corrupt police officers, all their names are getting put out. So they're taking all the corruption out of Hell's Kitchen, or so it seems. Obviously we have stuff coming back in later seasons, but Fisk is able to get away. He gets Vanessa to a helicopter. He's trying to escape in this armed transport. We get another badass Fisk line. He's telling the story about the man who was set upon by ill intent. He was like, "I'm not the man. I am the ill intent." I was like, "Oh, damn." Okay, Vincent D'Onofrio, okay. But they break him free from the police custody after they arrest him. He gets away, but Daredevil stops the truck. He throws a billy club into the window, which apparently shocks the driver into flipping the truck.
I rewound it because I was like, how the hell did the truck just flip? I looked down and I looked up and the truck was flipped. I was like, Daredevil's not setting bombs off to flip it, so I had to rewind it. And yeah, I was like, oh, okay.
Just flipped it.
He just threw a billy club into the windshield.
He unveils the new suit here that he got from Melvin Potter, which I hate this suit personally.
Really?
They put a new suit on in season 2, and it looks awesome. This suit I hate. Looks super boxy in the head and the body, and it has hexagons on the ears. The hexagon ears kill me. They take me out. They're like these hexagons with little lines, slits in them to show that that's how the sound can get through. But in season 2, the new suit just has like the suit goes up over his ear. It's just a black mesh over his ear. So I hate the hexagons. I hate the look of the suit. I think it's too dark and too boxy.
I agree that the suit is too dark. I wouldn't say I hate it. It's just like, to me, it's like, one, the suit he's wearing all season, the black suit is sick.
So good.
And this suit is just kind of like underwhelming, I'd say. And that's also only on screen for like 5 minutes, if that. So to me, it's like, I don't hate it, but it's just like...
Well, he gears up to protect himself from knives and bullets, and then he only fights Kingpin in it in that season.
Yeah.
Which has no guns and no knives.
And Melvin Potter's even like, I didn't get a chance to like do the whole suit, so it's not finished. So like, it's not bulletproof except for the black parts, which there's like hardly any. And then he's like, and it might deflect a knife on the red parts. I was like, doesn't sound like a sure thing. But
the fight with Daredevil or the fight with Kingpin, I don't love either. I just think their body shapes are so different that it's hard to watch him fight. At one point, he flips over Kingpin's back.
Mm-hmm.
That is the season 2 suit right there. Actually, I can't see. I don't have my glasses on. I have
season
these
1.
fake glasses.
It's got the hexagon
on the ears.
I thought I saw the mesh on the ears, but I'm not wearing my glasses.
In the fight that you're talking about, Kingpin versus Daredevil, there's one where Kingpin just like
Looks decent there.
charges at him and does it like a leaping punch,
I guess I don't hate it.
and then hits the ground. I was like, that was pretty. He like sells out for that move. He
But
like
he also
charge him and doom.
he flips over his back and flips Kingpin through the air.
That's like the first move almost.
Super unrealistic to be able to flip that guy.
Yeah,
with
that
that
was pretty
level of
crazy.
But anyway, the end result is that he beats Kingpin's ass, and the season comes to a close with Nelson and Murdoch. Things are looking up, and they've taken the corruption out of the city, and they're gonna work together to take on the small cases and protect the little guy of Hell's Kitchen.
I liked when they do that montage of all of his plants getting picked up.
Yeah, slow motion.
Yeah, the one that was really cool to me was the daily whatever.
They got
not the Daily Planet.
The girl at the
because it's like she's
newspaper.
like, you don't even really, maybe she's in the background of a shot, but she's not a character in the show. And the show's making you think that it's his boss.
Bulletin, right?
Yeah, the Bulletin, that's what it's called. The show makes you think it's his boss, right?
Ellison.
And so, but then when they go in and they pick up this random girl who's maybe in the background of some shots, you're like, damn. Like,
he has like one line because Ben comes in and he's like, "Is Ellison back yet?" And she's like, "No, he's going to his kid's recital." That's like the only line she has in the show.
Yeah, see, and it's like that. I don't know. I just really like that aspect of it because it's like, I liked the boss guy. Like he was like looking out for him and stuff like that. Yeah, he was kind of like
just a boss. He was trying to get him to better health insurance for his wife. Didn't want to fire him.
Mm-hmm. Offered him like a promotion, like let me know. But then I was like, man, I really hope it's not him that he's taking money because I didn't remember how that played out. But then it's the girl, and it's like, dang, that's really how it'd be. It'd be like somebody you're not expecting.
Yeah.
And
they took on corruption at a big scale. So I think it's not the most believable that one guy's testimony would put all these people necessarily in prison because it's just the word of one guy. I feel like they'd need more hard evidence. But in the concept of just suspending disbelief for the show, it's nice to get that emotional, closure at the end. Great word for it. To have it wrapped up nicely with a bow and all these people seemingly fixing the at least the corruption stemming from Wilson Fisk in the series. So it's a really nice bookend to the show. I think that the show overall is really strong. Like I said, some stuff I don't love in the end because I'm not in love with that suit from season 1. I'm not in love with the fight with Wilson Fisk at the end of the season. Mm-hmm. But overall,
they make up for it.
I do kind of feel like this last episode is like, I don't want to say like they rushed this last episode, but it does feel like things are moving a little too quickly.
Well, it feels like they're like, oh, let's save this one detective, and then he flips, and that solved all our problems. This guy's been giving you the work of being so overly prepared for every contingency. Everywhere you turn, he's already thought 10 chess moves ahead, and you just had to get to this one guy. That's all. This one guy testifies, and you guys are problem solved.
That's why they kill everybody, because like sometimes there is just one person that could blow the whole lid off of everything. That's why they leave such a trail of bodies, and like they're so thorough.
I think I could poke holes in his testimony. I think if I like no law degree, I go up there and be like, "Hey, so you said you murdered in cold blood your partner of a dozen years?
Mm-hmm.
How do you think that makes you look as a reliable witness? Like that would be step one. It's
I think one thing I was going to say is like the dismantlement or whatever you want to call it of like the villain team that goes throughout the season. Like the Russians are the first ones. Nobu dies. Gal leaves.
Or so we think.
And yeah, so we think.
Gal leaves with perfect timing. She's very wise. She's very smart.
But Leland, right? The money guy. I was like, I thought he was actually gonna live, because he was like, yeah,
contingency.
Right. He was like, yeah, I have it all set up. I'm gonna take half your money. This guy is like my ace in the hole, so you can't really touch me. And Fisk is just like, yeah, I don't care about any of that. You heard Vanessa, and he just punches him and throws him down the
every person in
elevator
the show underestimates his brutality. Even people who are right next to him, people who are working directly with him, they underestimate, his propensity for violence.
He beats that Francis dude. He beats the shit out of that guy.
Francis is smart. Francis comes back to work.
And then Francis is the new Wesley. He's not as good as Wesley, but he's in the place, and he's like, you trust him after that beating he gave him? And he's like, Wesley trusted him.
That's enough for me.
And I was like, dang.
Leland Owlsley is also a character from the comic book. He has superpowers in the comics. He can like glide, basically. He can like not fly but glide, and he has like talons. His power is based on being an owl.
I didn't know he was a character until I looked up, because sometimes they'll call him Owlsley, but Fisk and them call him Leland. But Murdoch and Nelson and Karen are always calling him Owlsley.
Yeah.
So I was like, who the hell is this Owlsley guy? So I looked up Owlsley from Daredevil season 1, and it was that guy, but instead of the actor's picture, it was the comic book character's picture, and I was like, oh, he's from the comic.
He's in Daredevil Yellow, which is the first Daredevil comic book I ever read, and I was like, hold the phone. This seems familiar from Daredevil. But is there anything else you guys want to talk about? Because we've been through a whole lot.
I think we've been pretty thorough.
This is a deep dive on Daredevil. I had a lot of fun with that.
There's your title right there. Deep dive season 1.
Daredevil. Boom. DDD. Daredevil deep dive.
Wait, say that again.
Wait, is that DDD?
No, I think I pretty much talked about all the like things that were in my head that I want to talk about. I think Ben Urich is really compelling. The Pastor's really compelling. Battle and Jack's really compelling. All those parts of season 1 are standouts to me. And obviously, like Charlie Cox's Daredevil.
Oh, he's so good.
So
I'm so excited to talk to you guys about season 2 in a week, because I'm enjoying watching it so much.
Here's one thing I was just about to talk about. The officer who's their friend, who they bring to Grandma Cigars. Yeah. He is, I like him a lot. I like him as a character. And I remember that he is like, he comes back. I know he makes detective and stuff like that.
Well, they do such a good job of getting their actors back. It's not just him. And he has a progression throughout the series. They do such a good job of writing this world, making it feel real. He gets promoted throughout the series. Yeah. He's in season 2. And then they bring back the exact same actor for the guy who killed his dad. I just said his name earlier in the episode, but I'm forgetting it now.
Killed whose dad?
He killed Battle and Jack Murdoch. He's
the crime guy.
Yeah, they bring him back in season 2, same actor and everything. They have. I wish they got the exact same people back to make Born Again. I'm nervous. How do you guys feel? Let's close that. Have that be our closing thought for now. Talking about season 1. How do you guys now feel about season 4, Daredevil Born Again?
I know you guys are a little more apprehensive than I am, because not that I don't like the show as much as you guys do, but I am less worried that this season 4 is going to be bad. Like, and the trailer, I think it looks very like tonally similar. I think probably it will be a little more MCU'd up. Like for example with like the purple suit that Bullseye's wearing. But I'm stoked. I can't wait. I can't wait to see Charlie Cox back really as Daredevil, because like in Spider-Man, he shows up, he's just Matt, and it's very brief. And then when he shows up in She-Hulk, It's very like She-Hulked, you know what I'm saying? Like he's not so much how he is in seasons 1 through 3 of Daredevil. So I'm excited to see Charlie Cox play the same Daredevil that we all three love. And I'm super stoked to see John Bernthal come back as Punisher. I have a much more deeper appreciation after this rewatch for Foggy and Karen, and just like even Fisk really. So I'm excited to see us really step back into that world. So I think it's gonna be good. I'm excited, and it's not that far away. So I'm getting real excited.
I get more nervous and doubtful with every episode and every passing day. So I just hope if it's half as good as Netflix's Daredevil, I think it'll be a great show.
If it's half as good,
I think so.
I think to me too,
I
like
think you'll be upset if
I'll be disappointed, but it'll still be good television.
No, I don't think you'd like it.
No, I think it'll be good television, not that I'll like it.
for me, I feel like, and you guys probably agree with this, I think I'm pretty easy to please when it comes to like my enjoyment of a show or a movie. So, and I feel like you guys are a lot harder to please. So I think that probably you guys will not be so satisfied with this Born Again show.
I think I'm harder to please with TV shows even than movies, honestly, because you have so much screen time. It's easy to get bored of it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that. I think overall, like, I'm excited. You mentioned the trailer looks really good.
Yeah.
I agree. The trailer does look really good, but so did the trailer for Echo. And it looked like really brutal. It looked like it had the same tone as like the Netflix show.
And then Aaron started watching it and he was like, oh, wait, a woman lead? I didn't know she was like the main character.
Well,
those were his words.
Yeah, I doubt it. I mean, not that Echo's like the best show ever or anything, but I think it fits pretty well into that like Netflix world. Like it was brutal at some times, and I don't know.
I think it's very not memorable, whereas every
yeah.
season of Daredevil has a lot of memorable moments.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also like it's Daredevil, and that show's Echo. You know what I'm saying? Like I never even knew the character Echo until they were like, this character is getting a show.
But Jessica Jones is just, I never knew who Jessica Jones was, and that show has memorable moments in it too.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
Yeah, I like that show just as much as Daredevil.
I like
honestly.
it far better than Echo. You know,
Yeah.
Yeah.
not even a contest.
Right.
So hopefully, I'm really hoping Daredevil Born Again is good. I mean, I'm rewatching all of Daredevil. I'm reading the Daredevil Born Again comics. I'm probably going to at least watch season 1 of Punisher also, because after watching season 2 of Daredevil, how could you not watch season 1 of Punisher?
You're dressing up as Matt Murdock. You're all in right now.
If I had time, I could maybe watch the Defenders season 2 or Defenders season also, but
Yeah.
I don't totally want to.
See, I'm watching it all because I never watched Punisher season 2 or Jessica Jones season 3 because at the end they were like canceling them. I was like, they're not going to matter. But now they're like, all that's canon. So I'm watching Daredevil and I'm going to go all the way through. So next show I'm going to start as
You
Jessica
gonna
Jones.
be back next week for season 2 of Daredevil though?
How are you going to watch all of them before?
I won't be able to do it
because you're
before.
going so slow.
I won't be able to do it before this new Daredevil show comes out. But I just want to refresh because there's things I haven't even seen.
I can't wait for Punisher season 1 because I just love seeing John Bernthal like bruised, covered in blood, eating a dirty can of beans. He's a simplistic, rustic man.
Will I be back for season 2 breakdown? I don't know. Probably not. I will try to, but we'll see.
No optimism.
That sounds like a no.
I guess I could watch it out of order and watch Daredevil season 2, but
if you put my feet to the fire, I guess.
it would be hard though for me to crank out 13 episodes in a week.
All right, comment below if you want Zach to be back 3 weeks in a row to be in Daredevil season 2 and season 3 and Born Again.
I could be here and be like, yeah, I didn't watch it, but we can talk about it.
I mean, you've seen it before.
Dude, years and years ago though.
Don't worry, I will be here to explicitly describe every detail of each episode.
How long is this episode?
This episode?
Yeah, because we've been talking a
2
while.
hours.
Damn.
Yeah, we've been talking.
Hey, we're here to talk.
That's right.
Daredevil
Hopefully,
season 1 wrap up.
People are here to listen too.
Yeah.
And we want to thank you for anyone who is still here 2 hours in for watching. You've probably already hit that subscription button and notification bell, but if you haven't already, do it.
You've been here this
Yeah,
long.
if you're here
Stick
this
around.
long, you might as well. You might as well also check out the Discord. That's linked in the description of this video too. That's where you can kind of join us and dive even deeper into the conversations that we have on the show here. We talk about different movies and shows that are coming out, and then we do different polls and debates and ranking lists on the Discord. But it is going to cost you because nothing in life just comes. How much is it going to be, Andrew?
Oh, man, I'm paying the Wilson Fisk rates now. It's absolutely free.
Totally free to join. Just got to click that link in the description. Andrew, where else are we?
You can check us out on all of our short form platform. Check us out on all of our apps at
Boom.
YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, X. We're all over the place. We post short form content every single day. You don't want to miss that stuff. Make sure that you check us out on there, and also you can share us with friends and family, because that is the best way to help our show grow organically. Share us with a movie lover in your life. Thank you so much for watching, and that's a wrap.